Welcome back to Dream It, Build It, Make It. I'm your host, Michael Heward, Senior Manager of Content Marketing here at Iterable, and I'm super excited to start the new year. Great batch of episodes coming up. The first one, very excited to chat about email with my first guest of the year, Elliot Ross from SparkPost. How you doing, Elliot?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, good to see you.
Awesome. I'm so excited to have you here. This is gonna be a great conversation. Before we dive into the meat of what we're going to talk about today, I'd love to hear a little bit more about yourself, and if you could tell everyone watching what you do at SparkPost.
Yeah, sure. So my background is like email and more email. Like I've done email for 15 years or something crazy, but at this point, so like I've worked in agencies and I've been client side, I've been ESP side. I've worked at a whole bunch of places. In around 2012, I went freelance, and that eventually kind of turned into like a creative agency for email, which is called Action Rocket. And then after that, we ended up like kind of splitting that because we ended up building a company called Taxi for Email. And we built a product which was or is rather so essentially the problem we found, right, we're making creative for people and giving them HTML. And then marketers would come back and they'd have one or two problems. They'll either come back to us every week and say, hey, can you update the email, like the template? We need to put some more content in it. Or they would do it themselves and break it, because HTML often isn't their strong suit, which is fine. Like, you know, marketers are massively expertise heavy, but it's you need to know a lot about a lot of things. So we ended up building Taxi, which is like a tool so that basically content marketers can get content into email. It turns out that like solving that for one email makes it a lot easier for solving it for lots of emails, like multiple languages, regions, segmentation, all the kind of complexities of email, which sound easy, but actually as soon as you start doing anything, it gets really complicated. So we built this product called Taxi for Email, and then that last year was acquired by SparkPost. So that's how I came to be a technology evangelist at SparkPost, which then a week after we were acquired, the whole thing was acquired by a company called MessageBird in Amsterdam. So yeah, it's been a busy year last year.
It sounds like it. Hey, lots of growth and change.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like good change.
Yeah, it's all exciting. Like I'm learning a huge amount. So yeah, very exciting.
Awesome. Well, to start off, I like to ask my guests as people, like we all have to deal with marketing, and we are working marketing and understand the nitty gritty of it. So when we see a good experience, we really can see what the good experience means. So for you as a consumer, what are the features of a good customer experience, and what makes a good buying journey for you?
So like it sounds really basic, but like knowing me, like and kind of genuinely being useful. Like I think as marketers, we're quite like it's a bit of a double-edged sword, but it's very easy for us to kind of know all the tricks. So like it's hard to pull the wool over our eyes. So it's hard to deliver a good customer experience to a marketer. And I think like when you see it, you appreciate it a lot more. So I think there's quite a lot, but like so there's a company in the UK called John Lewis, which is like a big I guess a department store, kind of similar to Macy's a little, that kind of thing. But I guess more kind of modern, maybe, I'm not sure. But anyway, so they're really heavy on really good customer experience. Like you go there, it's very clean. It's almost like a massive Apple store, like that kind of execution of a shop.
Aesthetic.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's very helpful, and they, you know, they're the kind of place people talk about that. Is it window shopping or whatever the phrase was, where like they look in shops like that and then go shop on Amazon or wherever. But like you know, genuinely, like it's a great experience, and it's really interesting seeing, like, if you're gonna buy like an iPad, you could buy it from, you know, you can buy an iPad in like Walmart these days, right? But like for some reason, buying the exact same product in a shop like John Lewis just feels a lot more kind of premium, even though it's the same price and everything else. So I think, you know, there's a few things I was trying to work out, like what is it that makes you feel like that's really cool. And I think part of it is just feeling listened to, like they're always there when either something wrong, or they kind of almost anticipate like, oh, this is a common thing that might go wrong when you're setting up your iPad. So here's a few hints and tips or something like that. So yeah, I like that kind of thing. Like, yeah, just genuinely being helpful as opposed to being helpful to hit a marketing KPI, which we're all guilty of. But yeah,
definitely. Sometimes that number matters a little bit too much to some people.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. When you notice that a brand really sweats the details, even if it's as small as just keeping the store clean, like keeping the aesthetic clean so you can see everything. I totally agree. Like that I'm a sucker for that too.
Yeah.
So we have the benefit of talking in January, and so we get a chance. We're on that cusp of being able to look back at last year and see what happened, and look at the year moving forward. So I'm curious from your perspective, looking at 2021. What happened that you think will have like a lasting impact on email marketing, and like what's gonna stick around? Essentially, is my question. To put it simpler.
Well, so email's a funny channel because it changes slowly, then all at once. Like, and part of that is because it's not owned by anyone. It's a kind of sort of nebulous sort of channel. But like, obviously, like the big thing that changed a lot last year was the MPP for Apple. So yeah, so if you've been under a rock for the last year, what basically happened is from iOS 15 onwards, if someone opens their email or your marketing email or whatever in Apple Mail, or even if they just have it set up in Apple Mail on their phone or iOS Mail, even if they're checking in Gmail or somewhere else, it's still going to kind of be treated the same way. What will happen is Apple are kind of downloading all the images in advance, and as a result, basically our open tracking, well, it looks really good, but unfortunately it's not true. So basically it looks like everyone on an iPhone, or who has ever checked their email on an iPhone from iOS 15 is opening their email straight away. So yeah, so the long and short of it is, unfortunately it's also not quite as clear cut as like every email ever is all the images are instantly downloaded. Like there's some situations. So for example, it skews towards opening when you're on Wi-Fi, or when your phone is plugged into the power and things like that. So the net effect is basically it means that open tracking is harder to trust. Like it muddies the waters quite a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's going to have a lasting impact, not only for Apple, because at this point you could probably kind of dedupe your Apple users and at least get an indication of what your open rate is like. It wouldn't be per person, but it would be kind of on aggregate, but you get an understanding. But it's going to go that way. You know, I think Chad White, it's a great guy. He talks a lot about this kind of stuff. And he said, like, just prepare at some point, like assume that 100% of your email in every email vendor is going to be affected by this, because then like you're kind of prepared for the worst, and it probably will go that way. Maybe not all the way to 100%, but yeah, you know, absolutely other vendors would start doing it.
Yeah, I mean that you're spot on. Like that's the biggest thing that happened to email last year. There was lots of alarms raised. So like in that same vein, coming into this year, where should marketers shift their focus to succeed in still getting past that almost?
Well, so like when the news of this broke, and there'd been a lot of conversations about this kind of stuff before, like, you know, there'd been things like Hey, which is from the Basecamp people, and it like that had done some stuff around sort of obfuscating open tracking. But the kind of initial conversation was like, well, actually open tracking isn't perfect, and we should probably look at better statistics. So like the short kind of pithy answer is say, just look at some better stats, but it's a lot harder. Like, you know, like if you're only ever looking at open rates, then absolutely, it's probably time to start thinking about other metrics. But if you're looking at opens as a kind of guiding metric in amongst a lot of other ones, like we've lost a valuable signal there. So I think that there's quite a lot of adapting to do. Partly it's about going and kind of setting the scene for maybe people higher up, or, you know, people that you report the metrics to. so that they have an understanding of actually, this isn't comparing year on year is going to be a lot harder now. Like, so the world has changed and we need to understand it. So I think there's a period of kind of learning as this stuff kind of gets rolled out a bit more. Like, it's only really in the last month or so where we've hit about 80-90% of people on iOS 15. So we haven't really had a kind of fair crack at it yet. And it only really hit the sort of consumer inboxes from sort of September onwards. So yeah, in terms of what to do this year, I think there's definitely a readdressing of what's going on with metrics. Doesn't necessarily mean that like your success is actually going up or down, but the metrics tracking it probably will do. There'll probably be some bumpiness. So we need to understand, like, do we just have to accept that metrics are a bit more woolly now and they're more indicative than absolute, or do we need to find other metrics to kind of replicate that? The people like e-commerce, I think, maybe in a better space because you can start doing a lot sort of smarter conversion tracking and things like that. So once you've got people out of the channel and into the web, like, you can do a lot more. It's going to be a lot harder for people doing publishing and people where the metric is you've read the email, like, you don't even have clicks at that point. Yeah. So it's going to be fun and games, but I think that's definitely a focus for people in this year.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a couple months of well, that number looks a little different, or that trying to adapt off of that. But I think a good next step, like as you're talking about like metrics, is just making sure that like you're a reputable sender, and with that comes email deliverability, which I think is something that a lot of people don't necessarily understand very well. So I was wondering if you could give a quick, like, what's something about email deliverability, even it's a hard one to say, email deliverability that everybody should know.
Yeah. So in SparkPost, I learned when I joined, they shorten it to D12Y, which I thought is kind of smart. I like that. So yeah, so the thing, like, so my background isn't super nerdy about deliverability, but it's always been around and I've always had to kind of know a bit about it. And I've learned a lot more over the last year or so. So yeah, things that I've kind of come to realize is like 10, 15 years ago, we had this kind of attitude, or the sort of best practice as such was like this kind of concept of spammy words, and the creative had a huge effect on whether you were going to get in the inbox and things like that. These days, so if you include the word free in a headline or something like that, or, if you code your images a certain way, that's going to be, the be all and end all. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was ever exactly the case, but those things are kind of in the law, and people will still to this day say, oh, you can't do that, but the thing I've learned is, like, so much of deliverability is based on like your individual reputation as a sender, like not even on the kind of ESP level, like on, as an individual customer, and even down to the individual consumer on the other end. Like, they might have different sort of deliverability in amongst your audience, that kind of thing. So much of it is based on, like, what's your previous behavior for emails that you've sent previously? How much did people engage with those? How much have do people kind of work with your email on aggregate? Have you, obviously there's some pretty hardcore sort of signals like marker spam and things like that, but a lot of it is a lot kind of softer. Things like Gmail, they can tell a lot about how people act in their email and how they behave with it. And I think they take a lot of those signals and run with them. The other thing that I've learned is it's not an exact science. Like, and if it is an exact science, it would only ever be like, here is the line right now, and by the time we finish this conversation, it will have changed.
Definitely.
So it is a case of kind of staying up to date with what's going on, but also it's a case of kind of understanding that there isn't a perfect, and all you can do is just try and chip away at being better.
Yeah, definitely. I always find it, you mentioned like using a subject line to get the attention, then I feel like there's always those unwritten rules amongst marketers. They don't do one that says like your delivery is delayed or something like that, and it's really just like a cart abandonment or like a promotion, like, oh, don't miss out on this. Like, wait, no, you just scared the hell out of me that I ordered something from your company.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've had kind of fake order confirmations, that kind of thing, and then you open it and it's like, hey, your order is almost confirmed. It's like, no, guys, come on, this isn't good. Ironically, I suppose, the way that things are much more algorithmically sort of led and that kind of stuff, that probably does become a stronger signal to not do. So yeah, maybe we will go back towards that kind of world. Yeah,
you can only hope. And so you mentioned like your phrasing of things will change by the end of this conversation. And email marketing as an industry has gone through change. You yourself have seen it from taxi for email to SparkPost to message again. So I'm wondering if you think that this, like these mergers and acquisitions and just these changing of companies and collaborations, is that a sign of email marketing growing? Like, how do you think that impacts the future of email marketing as an industry at large?
Yeah, so I think like email is becoming a lot more mature. Like it's a channel that's been around a long time, right? And the kind of concept of what we're doing hasn't changed that much. In terms of like technology, there's occasionally new things that come out. So we've seen things like AMP for email, and there's some kind of sometimes like dynamic content and things like that. So there are kind of new things that come. Sometimes they go and see how we get on with them. But in terms of where the channel's going, like I think it's still growing. It's a very valuable channel. It's crucially like not owned by anyone, like compared to marketing on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Just recently I was watching, there's a kind of case study when basically a brand got thrown out of social and they don't have a business anymore. Like, it's not, one day Twitter can say, sorry, that's it, off you go. So I think email will always have a place because of that. Like it's a very dependable, but also a very high yielding channel. Like it delivers a lot. And you speak, I speak to a lot of different marketing teams, and often email is the highest revenue generating channel. Especially when you look at attribution properly. Obviously you can say the website is the highest. The buy now button is the thing that generates the most money, of course, but it's what happens before that is crucial. So yeah, I think like in terms of platforms and that kind of stuff, like it's kind of interesting. Like, so MessageBird is I think it's called a CPaaS. So communication platform as a service. And the point there is that so SparkPost obviously is a massive company that does a lot of stuff in email, like from with Taxi, like creation of email all the way through to working out how to get it in front of the right people, to delivering it and making sure it actually gets into the inbox. So there's a lot of people working on that, and it's a big kind of enterprise. But MessageBird is a kind of step beyond that, because it's that, but in every channel. So there's WhatsApp and SMS and all these kind of things that crop up in different places. Like WeChat, for example, is massive in sort of China and in various different places, and kind of virtually unheard of in others. Instagram chat, all that kind of stuff. Like I wasn't aware, but like in WhatsApp, you can do a huge amount of marketing stuff. Like you can send like little marketing cards to people and all sorts of things in there. So like it kind of stands to reason from email's strength that it becomes core in a platform like that. So if you're like a massive enterprise or big company or whatever, and you want to be able to get in front of your customers, like being able to do it across multiple channels, that makes a huge amount of sense. And also it's not just a case of blast the same message to everyone. It's be able to say, okay, cool, so we did this in email, and then that has a context for what happens now in WhatsApp. Like it makes everything joined up, so you can do kind of customer service, marketing, messaging, everything with the same kind of strategy, I suppose. So yeah, really interesting seeing that. And I think like looking at some of the other players in the space, like that to me is where things are going. And it kind of goes back to this idea, like we were talking about customer experience. Like ultimately customers don't sit there and go, well, I got this email, but I know that that's from a different team, and that team doesn't speak to the people on social, and that team doesn't speak to the people on live chat.
Yeah.
Like, that might be true, but the customer isn't thinking that. They're just thinking, I'm interacting with this brand, and why does nothing join up? So it kind of makes sense that a platform, or group of products or whatever like that would be able to have that really cohesive kind of experience for a customer.
Yeah, and like you actually just touched on this, but I was about to ask you what you think the biggest opportunity for the customer experience is moving forward. Do you think is just making sure that you're using email in a way that informs other channels as well? Like it can obviously stand alone on its own, but you want it to be part of a cohesive experience, as you were saying. Like, do you think that's the biggest to improve the experience moving forward?
I think so. Like, I think, like over Christmas, I did a lot of online shopping and stuff, and it can be quite apparent when like stuff that happens on social or even stuff that happens on email compared to what you've done on the website doesn't join up. Like, you'll get sent a sale email immediately after you've purchased something. It's like, guys, that's super easy to suppress that, or at least, do something a bit smarter, or say, hey, by the way, look, we know you just purchased. Here's our sale. Do you want to add anything to it before we ship? There's some really smart stuff you can do if you plug things together and get it to kind of work in a smart way.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even count the number of times I've purchased something and then received ads or promotions for the same exact product. Like, at least go one product down your list. Like, don't do the same exact one.
I had one. I put it on my Instagram, but I had Amazon, and I was shopping around. It was actually for Secret Santa, and it was an advent calendar, but it wasn't like a chocolate one. It was like a gifty one. I can't remember what it was now. But anyway, it came up with like subscribe and save, like as the options. And it was like, we can send you this every month starting the 28th of December. It's like, that's the complete opposite for what I want an advent calendar for.
Forever advent.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Well, that's all I have for you. This has been a great chat. I've definitely learned a lot. I hope our viewers have as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. If anyone has any questions, is there any way they can reach out to either you or anyone at MessageBird?
Yeah, sure. So I'm super active on Twitter. I probably shouldn't be these days because Twitter's a bit of a cesspit of opinions and stuff, but there is still quite a lot of good stuff going on. So you can find me on there. So I am Elliot with 2 L's and 1 T. Also on Instagram is email Elliot, again, 2 L's and 1 T. Or iamelliot.com. You can find me on there. And I'm just around if you have any questions. Yeah, absolutely. Always up for hearing what people are doing and what challenges they have. Definitely.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to those in the description below. And again, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate having you. And
awesome.
To the rest of you, welcome to the new year. Dream it, build it, make it. See you next time. Thanks so much.
Yeah.